Let's talk about investment properties for a second. This has been a big week for investment property related conversations. And one of the questions I keep getting asked is, should I purchase this investment property, whether it is a rehab or a rental or whatever it may be, in my own name or in an LLC? Well, as some of you know, what makes me sort of unique as a lender is that for a long time now, I've also been a real estate investor for almost 20 years at this point. And I constantly find myself having to put myself in the shoes of the client and viewing things from their angle, because very frequently I am the client and I am viewing things from that angle. So I thought I would share for a second how I look at deals and how I decide whether the next investment property that I'm purchasing is going to be in my own name or in the name of our LLC. I actually do it on a very case-by-case basis, meaning when a deal is in front of me and I'm thinking about purchasing this property for whatever end, I actually look at that time and I decide, is it going into my own name or in an LLC? Now, typically there are really two sort of factors that you're looking at to make this decision. Number one is, what kind of risk, what kind of legal or liability risk does this deal incur? Do I need the protection of the LLC, in other words? Or what is the financing going to be if I do this in my own name versus in the name of an LLC? Because it completely changes your financing options. If you buy a property in an LLC, you can't do a residential mortgage on it because those are for people, not for entities, not for business organizations, right? So you need commercial financing if you're purchasing an LLC. Is that better? Is that worse? It depends on the deal. You see, with residential mortgage financing, it's all pretty simple when it comes to investment property loans. If you're buying a rental property, the decisions that we have to make are you putting 15, 20, or 25% down? Am I paying a point or am I not paying a point? It really is pretty simple, and we can talk through why somebody would want to make one of those decisions in a future episode, if you will. On the commercial side, it is a wide open landscape of all kinds of different products. The different lenders on the residential side, the different interest rates are going to be all within 1/4 to 0.5% of each other. But on the commercial side, you can find 2 to 3 to 4% or even points different in terms of what people are offering, depending on their appetite for the specific piece of business that you're talking about. So it is a much more open world that requires a lot more analysis. Just this week, we looked at a deal for a client that is going through with a property purchase, and we had to look at 9 different investors to figure out which one wanted this deal and was going to give them the best pricing on that deal. It's a completely different world. For example, if you're purchasing a short-term rental versus a long-term rental versus a rehab project, those are all different products. And there are specific products designed for each of those different scenarios, but all of those require you to be in an LLC. If you're purchasing a long-term or a short-term rental, you might be able to do residential financing, which typically has the advantage of offering cheaper financing, lower points, better interest rate, and long-term fixed rates, which long-term fixed rates on the commercial mortgage side are pretty rare. Most commercial loans that we've taken out in our lives have either been lines of credit, 520s, which means 5-year fixed period and 20-year amortization, or some variation of the sort. There are potentially sometimes long-term fixed rates available, but you can't count on it depending on what you're looking to do. All this to say, you can't really rely on some overarching theory of whether you should be purchasing homes in your personal name or in an LLC. You really have to look at it on a case-by-case business until you get to the point of some of these larger investors where they just know right off the bat that they're creating either an LLC where they're going to buy all of the properties or a different LLC for each individual property purchase. But for the regular everyday people, like you and me, most of you and me, I'll just share with you that we own 12 units as of this point, although we are actually in the process of selling a couple. So, sort of moderate to severe investor. But for most of us, we are analyzing it case by case. For some of the larger investors, they just know that they're doing LLCs, and that's fine. They're more familiar with the financing. If you're looking at buying your first 1, 2, 3, 4, let's talk about what strategy makes the most sense for you depending on what you're trying to do, the specific property and the specific goal, and where you might be in your journey. Thanks.